Welcome to David Gain College Horizon Pods. Today, in this podcast, we're going to look at LILA Liverpool, one of the David Gain branches and part of the group of the David Gain colleges. And with me today, I have with me the proud principal of the college, Tom Davies. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Theo. It's nice to be here.
Great, great. Well, since our last podcast that we had, there's been a lot of developments. And I'm very interested, as well as I'm sure our listeners, to hear all about all these positives and successes that we've had. But let us actually put our listeners into the picture of how LILA was established and the relationship between the David Gain College.
Absolutely. So David Game, of course, has a history going back 50 years. Lila has a history that goes back 20 years. And Lila came out of an idea from two sisters, Leanne and Victoria, who themselves were English language teachers who had taught English all around the world and had seen good practices and practices that could be improved and thought, we could really create something special ourselves in terms of a language college of learning where students truly love to learn and they're not just learning for the sake of it or because they have to because of their parents or their job. And indeed, the byline, the website, everything about Lila is love to learn. So over those 20 years, Lila built up a reputation for a very high quality experience, for the quality of its output in terms of the students, and the quality of its education and training. In fact, winning last year the Pioneer Award for Best Language School in the world, which, when you consider the size of some of the global competitors out there, is an extraordinary achievement. We were recently inspected by the Independent Schools Inspectorate, who are, of course, the regulator for private schools, and we achieved the highest possible rating of exceeds expectations, which was a testament, I think, to the quality of what we provide and the hard work of the team. So I like to leave that ringing in people's ears as well.
Absolutely, and congratulations, because that's not easy to achieve.
The partnership between David Game College Group and Lila it sort of came into being. It was born a few years ago when we were looking, or the sisters were looking at the wonderful site that they have in Liverpool, very bright design-led, glass walls, classrooms, truly in the heart of this great northern city. But looking at its use and the fact that language being so cyclical and seasonal, very, very busy in the summer, pretty busy year round, but there was more that could be done with this space. And the time that we could use that space in a better way perfectly matched up with the sixth form term calendar. And so the idea was born to launch a new kind of A-level provision. And Leanne was aware of David Game College, and in particular aware of their ethos that no student should be judged by their past, that students should be given the chance to exceed and excel in a very special learning environment, again, where students are encouraged to love their learning. And so it seemed a natural partnership. So conversations were had, and eventually LILA College, almost like a brand within a brand, sitting within LILA Language School, was born. And we are now in our third year of delivery for A-level programs, 18-month and 2 years, and the University Foundation program with both September and January starts.
Well, that's excellent, and I'm glad that you said that. Obviously, one of the focus and probably the ethos of LILA College and David Game is the fact that you basically are focusing on students who may have struggled in other environments and may have excelled in other environments, but we must look at every student on a case-by-case basis. And that is part of the ethos. Well, can you just elaborate a bit about the actual mission of LILA College and some possible unique values that are central to the college's identity?
Absolutely. So the love to learn is the central value that we hold, as we said before. We want students to feel like learning is something that they develop a passion for, that they enjoy. If you study something you are genuinely interested in and that you love, it will feel less like work. In terms of the values package that the college lives by, we trust ourselves, we trust our students, we trust our staff. We develop maturity, responsibility, and a spirit of excellence in all that we do. and the welcoming nature, the idea that all are welcome, that we value equality, diversity of students, diversity of staff, diversity of opportunity as well. You mentioned that both David Game and Lila focus very much on the student experience and the student as an individual. One of the things that we help us do that is our small group sizes. David Game, of course, launched as a tutorial college and has kept that focus on the individual. Students aren't homogenous. They learn in different ways. They excel and exceed in different ways, and they respond differently to different tasks, different kinds of encouragement and cajolement. And our small group sizes mean that each student truly is treated as an individual. With a group size of no more than 8, this means that our students can truly get to know their teachers, their personal tutors, myself, can discuss their learning needs, their ambitions, and all of those are valued individually and supported individually. So during the class, teachers have a lot of time to check in one on one with the students in their groups to ensure that they're not struggling. And one of the catchphrases we live by in Liverpool is it is far easier to keep up than it is to catch up. So we make sure that students do not fall behind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad that you actually mentioned about the staff, because obviously we can recruit as many students as we want, but if we don't have the quality of staff, the right staff, then obviously we're not going to be able to satisfy the expectations of the parents and students. So tell me a little bit about the leadership team at the college, and also what are the expectations of students from the staff and the faculty?
Absolutely. So, if I rather narcissistically start with myself, I began my life as a barrister specializing in criminal law, prosecution, and defense. And then I moved into education for what I hope is the best reason to do so, which is that I thought I would enjoy it. And as it turned out, I loved it. So, gradually, my exposure to practice was restricted as my exposure to education grew. And I became eventually the dean of a law school in Ireland. And in fact, have been the dean of 3 university law and business schools here and in the UK. So I bring a specialized experience in higher education, working with further education, and in particular in building students up for success at university. And so when we're preparing students to leave Liverpool, I'm looking for UCAS applications that are of the quality that I would have said yes to as an admissions tutor in the university sector.
Absolutely.
For our leadership team from LILA, the experience is 20 years of individualized, student experience focused, and quality based education, with Leanne and Victoria both having over 20 years' experience, just 20 years with Lila, of course, and having lived the experience of a teacher and both a student. For our teaching team, we are looking for for teachers who have genuine specialisms in their subjects. So it is a base requirement that our teachers should have an undergraduate and a postgraduate qualification in the subject they teach. And this means that students can expect a truly passionate and knowledgeable teacher, often with experience out there in the real world when it comes to either accountancy and business or economics or sociology, psychology. Often their teachers will have doctorates or will be currently working on their doctorates in these specialized areas. And it really makes a difference to have a teacher who, when you ask the question, well, how would that work in practice? Can say, well, actually, I've done it in practice and I can tell you exactly how it works, or I've worked with partners in practice, rather than a teacher for whom the subject they're teaching may not be their specialism. So we think that creates a very special environment. It's a very flat organization. We are not particularly hierarchical in that we want students to get to know everybody from the principal down, and indeed the directors as well. Students should feel that there are open doors everywhere so that they can speak to whomever they feel the most comfortable speaking to, whether that be about a personal issue, financial issue, feeling homesick, or an academic issue. And it feels, many have commented, in fact, our most recent 5-star review on Google was from a recent sixth form student who said that the atmosphere was very special and that the standards were exceptionally high, but that she'd never felt quite so welcome in any other learning environment.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that, Tom. And you mentioned briefly about the two main programs, the GCE A levels and the foundation program. And I want us to really elaborate a bit more on them, because obviously that both of those programs are what we call in education terms level 3 programs, but they are slightly different in the methodology of teaching and so forth. Tell me a little bit about that. And uh, Are there any new programs that you're envisaging to bring into the equation for the next academic year?
Absolutely. So A levels, of course, are the, I suppose, traditional way of proceeding from GCSE level study through to university. If you're a UK student, you'd be very familiar with A levels. And if you're in a British based international school, you would be as well. For us, they run on a 2-year program that starts in September of every year, or you can also join an 18-month program that starts in January every year. Typically, an A-level student will choose 3 subjects. Sometimes students want to do more, 4 or 5. I would always have an in-depth conversation with them as to why, because even universities like Oxford and Cambridge only express their offers in terms of 3 A-levels, and I want to ensure that students get the highest possible grades and don't dilute their efforts by trying to do too much. Students will aim, of course, for the highest possible grades. As I've mentioned, universities express their offers traditionally in 3 grade terms: AAB, ABC, etc. And A levels are very particularly structured. So you'll study across 3 terms each year, and your examinations, your formal board SAT examinations that produce your final grade, take place at the end of your course of study. So for the September start, 2 years after they've commenced that program, they will be examined on everything they've learnt since the commencement of that program. Similarly, 18 months later, they'll be sitting those exams. This works very well for a particular kind of student. And of course, we don't just leave them in limbo, not knowing how they're doing until they sit their final exams. There are many assessment points that are undertaken in exam conditions, as well as workshops, presentations, and other ways of checking comprehension and understanding. And we do proper full mock examinations at the end of their first year. And some students may even choose to sit for an AS level exam, sat through the boards at the end of their first year. The pressure that can come with A levels is not for everyone, because you do, of course, have to revise that huge long period of learning toward the end of your course of study. For students who prefer in course assessment, incrementally being tested on their knowledge as they progress through the program, the University Foundation program might be a better fit. In that regard, it is shorter. We have a September start that is a 1-year program, and a January start unique to Liverpool, which is an intense 6-month program. And both of
Can I
these.
interrupt, Tom? The foundation course, I mentioned briefly before in academic terms, is a level 3 program. Is it equivalent to A level?
It is equivalent in the sense that it qualifies you for entry to university. It is the same depth that we go into in terms of the subjects. Of course, it's shorter in time, so you might argue it's not quite the same breadth of study, but it is accepted and recognized like any level 3 qualification for progression to university. It is a different learning experience. It is, some might argue, a less pressured experience because you are being assessed with in-term progress tests and end of term and end of half term examinations. And for some subjects, those examinations are quite practical in nature. So it can be a less intense method of getting to university. It also is arguably particularly good for someone who may have had a break from study. The step up from GCSE to A level is well known and can be challenging even for those coming directly from GCSE. The foundation program contains within it communication modules, ICT modules, where we make sure that you have a level of proficiency with the basic Office suite of programs, for example, that most employers and degree providers would expect you to be competent with. So, for someone who has been out of study for a short period or is coming to the British education system from a very different background, the foundation can be a much more comforting and supportive environment than throwing you straight into A level study.
Absolutely. And would you say that it's more adaptable for international students that rather than domestic students?
I would say probably yes, because you are not that you are on our A-level program, but because you are not effectively being told you're going to be thrown a huge amount of knowledge and then we're going to test how you've done in 2 years, because there is this level of support and a very specific focus each half term on a suite of tests that we will prepare you for and you'll have practice opportunities. I think for someone for whom they're dealing with both the culture shock of moving to the UK and the UK education system, it's certainly a very supportive and positive environment and welcoming environment.
Absolutely. And obviously, at the end of the day, the goal and objective of both the parents and the students are to uh, have access to universities. And David Game College, over the years, has built a very strong relationship, I believe, with the university sector. including the Russell Group universities, which I'm sure you can elaborate on the experiences that you have had with any of the universities that have visited the college. So give us a little bit of the background as to the advantages students have by having access to all these universities.
Absolutely. So, unlike, for example, a foundation program that might be based on one university campus that funnels you only to that university and its programs, the UFP is one of the longest established independent programs, allows you to choose from an extremely broad palette of universities. The course has been formally recognized by around 100 universities with guaranteed progression routes for two of those, universities of Essex and Hertfordshire, and that stable of recognition is growing all the time, of course, through your efforts, and not least as Director of Partnerships. Locally, we have, for example, very close links with Liverpool John Moores and with the University of Liverpool. I myself have links with the universities of Manchester, Newcastle, Leeds across the region, as well as many others. And through a combination of those formal recognition agreements and the independent links that various members of staff have, I think the main advantage we offer at LILA Liverpool is that we truly understand what it is the universities are looking for. I myself was a senior admissions tutor for my faculty in 3 different institutions. And so I know how the process works and I know what we were looking for when we looked at UCAS forms, whether that be the way in which the form itself and the personal statement has been constructed, or whether that be the broad brush picture that the student paints of themselves. So, over the course of the foundation program in our A levels, for example, we support students into obtaining work experience if they do not have any, to meeting our partners. We only this term, only in the last few weeks, had, for example, visits from the universities of Dundee and Aberystwyth to speak to us, who have close relationships with the David Game College group and particularly recognise applicants from our students. We brought students down to London to the university's fair that the group arranges in the London College, where they met a huge number of university partners and were able to really, for some of them, confirm where they thought they already wanted to go. For many of them, open up new ideas about institutions they weren't familiar with, or even courses of study they didn't perhaps think might have been open to them, and to better understand the application process. And beyond that, we also have speakers come in from industry. So next term we have lawyers coming in, we have consultants. We're looking to get 2 ladies coming in from EY, for example, to talk about the career of becoming a consultant with one of the big partnerships globally, which are fantastic opportunities. So with that combined approach, we think that we give the advantage to our students of familiarity, knowledge, expertise, the peace of mind that their teachers know what it is that they are helping them prepare for. And finally, we have our progression platform, which is a series of workshops designed specifically for our students, free of charge to all our academic bookings, which focus on the wider skills that universities and employers look for: public speaking, leadership, teamwork, professionalism, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Um, I just want you to mention to our listeners about the different pathways that are available so that they can gather whether the college covers all the disciplines that one would want to actually follow at university.
Absolutely. So pathways are specific to the UFP program. A levels, of course, you study 3 separate subjects, and our subject choice is always updated on our website. For the foundation program, the program is designed, the course as a whole, into 3 phases. And everybody does a common first phase, which contains a core mathematics module, a communications module, which includes presenting yourself effectively both in person and in writing, and finally, the ICT module I mentioned earlier, covering basic Office Suite programs. We then move into phase 2 and phase 3. And this is where a student's particular choice of pathway comes to the fore, because the subjects they choose there, their 3 majors, as we call them, dictate that specialism. So we in September have got 4 pathways that are currently available: business and finance, law and humanities, science and pharmacy, and engineering and computing. For our January compressed 6-month intense program, we offer just 2 pathways, and that's the law and humanities and the business and finance. And that is because by layering the phases 1 and 2 in that intense program, you would be expected to do both core and further maths together if you did that for the science or the engineering route. Come September of next year, we are hoping to add a new pathway to the foundation program, which is the specialist medical route. which in combination with the experts already present in the college group in London will help students progress on to a medical school as a result of taking the foundation route. So a really good variety of options. Science and engineering, for example, or computing and engineering, forgive me, doesn't just produce people who go into IT jobs. You could be becoming a civil engineer, a structural engineer, a mechanical engineer, or moving into forensic computing, and so many other realms, AI research and things like this. So lots and lots of routes. I like to call our pathways the trunk of a many branched tree. Once you climb that trunk, there are many options waiting for you.
That's true, and I just want the listeners to be familiar that we work with the Russell Group universities in incorporating, King's, Manchester, Leeds, Durham, and many others. And this has been as a result of the 50 years that David Game has been in the education sector. But focusing on the medicine that you said you'll be launching in September of next year, the group does work with and has associations with the Royal College of Surgeons, the Mary University of London and Malta, St. George's University in Granada, universities in Europe, such as in Cyprus and in Hungary, as well as in the United Kingdom, the University of Central Lancashire. So there's quite a broad spectrum of medical programs. What, what would be the benefits to a parent making a decision or a student in following medicine with the LILA medical program?
I would say that there are certain professions where you can be assured that if you are competent, you will never be without work, and which also promise to open doors to a truly global career should you wish it. And I think medicine, much like law, is one of those, in that if you study with us and follow the medical route you just described, through those partnerships, you can progress to becoming a doctor qualifying here in the UK, or you can pursue a medical degree in a number of other jurisdictions. And many of those universities will have partnerships, and the professional bodies that you qualify with will have recognition agreements with jurisdictions all around the world. And this means that, for example, I know a doctor who qualified in the UK who's just moved to Australia, required no new qualifications in order to do so. And I have to say, has tripled his salary in so doing. And the opportunities are myriad. One of our students, in fact, through a link made at an event I recently attended, is even considering, once they qualify as a doctor, going into the medical directorate within the British Armed Forces, which means that they will actually become a surgeon working with the armed forces, traveling all over the world, getting the most extraordinary trauma care experience and field experience that even the surgeon in the armed forces I met to said, once you then leave us, you can write your ticket anywhere. So I think a combination of our links with both the academic institutions, the professional bodies, and ultimately the employers mean that our students are getting a really good foundation. And I should stress as well, as I'm sure is the case in London, our support for our students does not end when they finish their exams and leave. If you were to come back to us and say, hey, I not only need a reference, but actually, can I get some advice from you? Of course you can. You're one of our students, one of our alumni, one of our students who was successful in being signed as a professional footballer has recently got back in touch saying, I've actually decided I might like to go to university. Bit cheeky, would you help me with my UCAS form? Of course we will, because you were one of our students, you did our program.
Well, I think that's the important element as far as success at the college, and I'm sure you can also mention to the listeners any success stories that we've had over the last 24 months, and uh, are there any measures and that the college will use to celebrate these success stories?
Yes. So whilst you're with us as a student, at the risk of sounding Big Brother-esque, we're always watching. And we're always watching for students who are excelling, both academically, but also when it comes to their citizenship within their student community. So we do little prizes, both at the end of the year in an awards ceremony, but also throughout the year, just to recognize when we see good practice by students. So, for example, this year, one of our students, Simona, she got 100% in her maths examinations on the foundation program, which is an exceptional achievement. And she was recognized in our annual Wowzers ceremony that always happens shortly before Christmas, before the full college and full college community. Others we recognize for having 100% attendance or just for being nice, good students that we see who are always there, always want to help their fellows, their peers, want to get involved in extracurricular activities, and generally live as good examples. Um, in terms of recognition for successes when students leave us, I mentioned a student who was successful in being signed as a professional footballer. He was on our Stephen Gerrard Football Academy partnership, which is an additional experience any student can join on to an academic booking. Very talented footballer. He had offers of places at university through our help, and those offers I'm sure will be open to him now he's decided he wants to go back to university having sampled that life. We had a foundation student, business and finance, who actually was proceeding onto a master's program. She already had an undergraduate course from Ukraine, but that, as you can imagine, had been very disrupted. And she wanted a year of undisturbed academic study before applying for a master's role, and chose to use the foundation for that. Not only has she graduated with a distinction in her master's, she's just got her first graduate job with the global chain Boots, whose headquarters are in Nottingham. She went to Nottingham Trent University and won a scholarship with our help there, which paid 50% of her fees and 50% of her accommodation. I also must mention our two most recent A-level graduates, our first two A-level graduates, Max and Mary, who went on. Max was keen to become a biomolecular scientist and got into his first choice university at Kiel, where he sent us some photos recently of him in the lab looking exceptionally happy. And Mary, who applied to a number of top universities in London and is now there studying business and international finance. So we are very proud of the students who've stepped on to their next stage from us.
I think that's important for the parents and listeners to hear that students at David Game College and in the group as well as in LILA, we're focusing on their progression, and our objective is to make sure they enter into university. Yeah, and I think that's a success story in itself, that we have very few students who may not enter into university of their first choice, and that's an important strength that we have. Um, you're in Liverpool, we're in London, and we had Embark, other colleges elsewhere. What would set Liverpool apart from any of the other competitors in the region or in the country as a whole?
Well, some of what I might say might surprise people, particularly regarding the weather. Liverpool is one of the great northern cities. If you look across a sort of slightly slanted line across the north, you've got Liverpool, you've got Manchester, you've got Leeds, you've got Newcastle. And I have lived in three of those cities, Leeds, Manchester, and worked in Liverpool as well. And I have to say that I'm not saying anything negative about London. I lived in London for 10 years and I enjoyed it a huge amount. But the northern cities are friendly. The pace of life is slightly less frenetic. I think people in London are very poor in terms of time. It's a very busy city. You have to get everywhere very quickly. Everyone's very, you know, focused on their own experience. Whereas in Liverpool, people are focused on each other. So we have all the benefits of a major Western city. We have all the great shows, all the traveling tours and performances. The city went crazy for Taylor Swift recently. Pink, great shows from the West End, opera, great touring music acts. We actually have more museums and galleries in Liverpool than any other city in the UK other than London. So there's a real focus on culture. We are, of course, the birthplace of the Titanic, although the hull was commenced in Ireland. The ship was actually built and finished here before sailing round to Southampton. And generally, it is a phenomenal place to live. I mentioned the weather because Liverpool is a coastal city, and its position with the way that the Pennines and the Yorkshire Dales work around the northern region mean that we actually get far better weather than many northern cities do. I live in Manchester and commute to Liverpool, and it's completely normal for me to leave Manchester quite grey and cold and arrive in Liverpool to blue skies and sunshine because of its location. And believe it or not, Liverpool has a wonderful beach, Formby Beach, about 25 minutes travel from the school, which is a beautiful sandy beach, big sand dunes. And yes, you can swim in the water and surf in the summer, which many students do not believe me. From an education point of view, there are, if you look in the city centre, 4 universities. If you widen it to the greater Liverpool area and region, you've got 7 universities, including a couple of Russell groups within easy commuting different distance. 45,000 people working in business and finance, the largest concentration in that area outside of London. but you've also got the Knowledge Quarter, where you will find biomedical sciences with companies like BioGrad, who were the first to commercialize COVID testing and other vaccine-based technologies, as well as many other medical technologies, based right here in Liverpool, run by Liverpool grads and Liverpool students who've come from all over the world. So there really is a plethora of reasons as to why you would want to send your student to Liverpool.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it very eloquently, Tom. Um, I want to now focus on some practical issues that listeners want to know. And one of the main issues is fees, tuition, fees, accommodation, living expenses. And can you tell me what those are for Liverpool and how do they compare with Manchester, London, and other major cities?
So I think the first thing to say about fees is that Liverpool, of course, by definition, and listeners won't be surprised to hear this, is a cheaper city to live in than London. Now, some listeners may be aware that there has been recently an announcement by the UK government of a rise, a 20% VAT being added to private school fees. Lila has taken the approach of protecting parents from that rise. In fact, the fees from January to June, that rise will not be passed on to parents. There will be a rise from September, a total of 18% on tuition. However, even after that rise comes into a force, the fees in Liverpool are substantially lower than you might find with competitors, both in London and in other cities. So the fees at the moment for the foundation program are £16,500 for the program. That compares extremely favorably with other comparable courses and will be going up to around 18,000 in September, which remains extremely competitive. I mentioned our student Mary earlier, who's living in London, and she told me something about the accommodation costs with her university. She loves her university, but it is expensive to live there. You're looking at a starting price of around perhaps £180 a week for a residence place in Liverpool, which compares again extremely favorably with other major cities, including London. And our host families, who provide wonderful homes for students and have been doing for up to 20 years, some of them, and are recruited by us, not by agents, provide a fully catered or a half board service as well as a welcoming students into their homes. So it can be an extremely economical choice without compromising on quality.
Well, no, I think that's important for the parents to understand because some people do come with budgets and want to make sure they make the right decision to be able to cover the cost of studies for their son or daughter. Um, we're coming to the end of the podcast, Tom, and uh, I just want you to basically send a message to our listeners about what advice would you give to prospective students considering applying to the college?
Hmm. I mentioned close to the beginning of the podcast that if you love what you're studying, it doesn't feel like work. So the first advice I would give is think carefully about what program of study most appeals to you and why. Think about what kind of job you would like to do, whether you have a particular career in mind. But I would also say it doesn't matter if you don't know at this stage what you want to do for the rest of your life. Many of our applicants are 15 or 16 years old and quite legitimately don't know what they want to do yet. So I'd say if you're in that position, our approach is we chat to you, we get to know you, we learn what you are good at, what you enjoy, and we can help you work out which areas of study will be most productive for you. I would say to students that you can expect a very honest conversation with us. If a student says to us, I would like to do veterinary science, for example, but it transpires in conversation that they absolutely loathe chemistry and have got very bad marks in it, then we might start investigating with them better choices because ultimately the focus for us is what is best for the student. How are they going to be best supported to succeed and to excel? I would say to students, do your research, have a look at our website, look at the programs we offer, and have some idea as to what you might like to do with us and why. And I would also say to them to don't be afraid to try new things when you do come to us. There are many opportunities that we offer students for residential trips, extracurricular activities, workshops that will push your confidence boundaries when it comes to working with others, leading others, developing your own professional persona. And we recommend that students throw yourselves in jump in with both feet, be enthusiastic, be open to new experiences, because these really will help shape you as a successful future candidate.
Absolutely, Tom. And I'd really like to thank you. Um, it's been wonderful just to hear all the developments and the news from LILA Liverpool. And I'm looking forward to the next podcast because I'm sure we'll have a lot of news in order to pass on to all our listeners. To our listeners, thank you. And if you want to find out more about all of our podcasts for the David Gain College group, please go to davidgaincollege.com. Thank you to all our listeners and look forward to the next podcast, Tom. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.